have between the lines. Uh, Number one story of the week for me: Eagles 9-1. You go into a game, big divisional game against the Cowboys. Dak Prescott, who's better, Dak or Wentz? Here's this big, huge game. Last year's NFC East champions, number one seed in the playoffs. This year's looking like going to be NFC East champions, and they're going to be the number one seed going into the playoffs. They face off, and the Eagles absolutely smashed the Cowboys. Smashed them. I know the Cowboys aren't as good as they had been in the past, but to see them absolutely get whooped. I mean, I think Dak Prescott in my fantasy football league had negative points as a quarterback position. Unreal. And I think it started, everybody was giving all the credit to Wentz, but this team is good.
Yeah, it's time to stop doubting. Time to stop doubting the Eagles. Every week it's like, are the Eagles legit? Are the Eagles legit? Well, look at the record. They're 9-1, and they're rolling over teams.
Yeah.
I mean, they are just rolling over teams. They made some good acquisitions, to add on to bolster their roster, which was a good decision because they know it's time to go for it. That their division's pretty weak.
And getting Darby from the Bills. Darby's a very good corner, and he's going to be able to lock down number one receivers throughout the playoffs and maybe potentially into the Super Bowl. He had a bad ankle injury to start the year, and it slowed him down to being able to get there. But he gets up full speed and full acclimated to that team. They have players on their defense. I can't believe the Dolphins traded them Jay Ajayi.
Yeah, that was for nothing.
For a fourth-round pick. Now, I get that running backs in the NFL are undervalued at this point in time because of these spread systems and everything else. But tell me a team that makes it to the Super Bowl that doesn't have a dominant running game. You look at last year. You had Atlanta Falcons with two great running backs on their team, and you had the Patriots where LeGarrette Blount had 1,000 yards and 17 touchdowns. On top of that, Deion Lewis was coming off the bench, and you have all these guys who can play. Running games mean you win. And if you don't have a running game, it hurts you. And LeGarrette Blount, now in Philly, Philly's a good team. It's the LeGarrette Blount benefit. Any team he's on seems to do well. And then you get a Jay Ajayi. I think he had 9 carries the other day for 70-something yards. And barely any touches, and he uncorks it. The team doesn't have holes.
No.
I can't look at the offense and say, oh, man, the Eagles pass, the wide receivers are weak. Alshon Jeffrey's not even blowing up, and the guy's been a number one receiver his entire career. He's got massive hands. He's got a touchdown in 3 straight games. The team is solid there at receiver. Ertz is having his best season of his career. Their offensive line is solid. They have a great running back tandem. Wentz is a franchise-level quarterback.
Yeah.
And you're playing in a division that right now the Giants stink. The Cowboys seem mediocre right now. The Redskins seem mediocre right now. They lost a big game. So the Eagles have really been dominating. I think that this is going to be a team that sticks around. And I think the Cowboys will reset. Losing Zeke is going to hurt them in terms of their record.
That was a distraction the whole year.
It was, but he played amazing.
No, I understand.
They were winning games because he was in. Now he's gone. They're not going to win as many games because you can't ride on this guy who's got this super talent. I think that we always expected the Cowboys to have some type of regression. How much regression they've seen, I think some of it has to do with the league catching up to them. Some of it has to do with last year there was a lot of, they had a purpose, they had camaraderie, they had some things, and it's just fallen. And then the Eagles they slowly, steadily built a great team over a couple of years. And they made some aggressive trades this offseason that seemed to be panning out. Number 2 story of the week, Antonio Brown. Talking about wide receivers. 10 catches, 144 yards, 3 touchdowns. This is the Antonio Brown that I expected on my fantasy team. And he had some games this year where he did absolutely nothing, and it was out of character for him, and this is the type of game that this guy can do.
Crazy catch against the helmet. I mean, he's a talent like no other. Antonio Brown, another guy that was drafted low and has that chip on his shoulder that's like, hey, I'm here to prove who I am. And, I mean, the dude is the superstar of the league.
I think he's this era's Jerry Rice.
Yeah.
He's a guy who he's not the fastest. He's not the strongest. He's not the biggest. But the guy just every week goes out and he gets separation. He makes catches. He makes hard catches. He runs crisp routes. He does things that you don't expect him to be able to do, and he does them. And he's not that physically imposing guy. You know, you look at Odell when he's healthy, and he's this flashy, flamboyant, high acrobatic type athlete. You look at Julio Jones, and he looks like a creative player, wide receiver. And then you look at Antonio Brown, he looks like, the fifth string wide receiver on the team. And he's a marvel.
That's why we love sports.
He's amazing.
for stories like that. He's got a great personality, too. I love his flair. He's, like, cocky, but he's not like, I think he's a little toned down than, like, Odell Beckham in a different way. I think I love Antonio Brown. Nothing against him.
Antonio's the dude. Last story of the week. We're talking about NBA Western Conference. Is it as dominant as everybody expected it to be? So our first story of the day was talking about the Celtics and their run. In that run, they beat Golden State, who's supposed to be the top of the heap out west. You have the Rockets are ahead of them. You have a team like Oklahoma City that everybody expected to be great. I expected to be great.
Yeah.
And they've got a losing record. Yeah. I think they're 7-9. Do we think that the West is not as good as we expected, or do you just think this is early season stuff that'll kind of wash away as it goes along?
I think there's a lot of factors. I think with OKC, it's they haven't played together. It's learning to play together. Again, like the whole thing is playing. It's all about how you mesh. The Celtics team just meshes. They've come together. They played for a purpose. The Knicks team, they've meshed. They played for a purpose. Right? Everyone's saying, this is a tank season. This is a tank season. And guess what? Every time a coach says this, and it's so true, inside that locker room, everyone's like, block out those haters. We are not. It's probably a big bulletin board in their locker room that says this is a tank season, right? Just like the Yankees, this is a rebuild season. No, it's not. In your locker room, if you believe that, if you mentally believe that, and you work together, listen, you can put something out there. But at the end of the day, can they beat Golden State in a 7-game, playoff series? Yeah, no.
Yeah, I think Golden State is so far ahead. They've gotten to what the Spurs were like a few years ago when they were on their championship binge, and every other year they seemed like they were winning a championship. That the regular season doesn't matter as much.
No.
They did try to beat the Celtics. I'm not going to give them a pass that they went and they played against the Celtics and they didn't give up their full. It's the regular season. It doesn't matter. You want to beat the other great teams.
Yeah, of course.
Right. So I think that was a clean win by the Celtics. Could the Celtics do that 4 times in 7 games? I don't know. Yes. Right now, I can't say yes because Golden State has just shown that they're so dominant. But teams that I expected to be really, really good, like Oklahoma City, aren't. They're not showing up with the record that you would expect them to have. And then on the flip side, you have the East that's winning games against Western Conference teams that people expected to be better. The Clippers, losing Chris Paul, but bringing in Patrick Beverley, allowing Blake Griffin to now be a focal point. You still have DeAndre Jordan. You're supposed to have some pieces that still put together. You've now lost just 10 games straight.
Yeah.
You get absolutely handled by the New York Knicks, who are a surprise team in the East. You have Oklahoma City with a losing record.
Sixers are playing well.
And then you have Eastern Conference. The Sixers look good.
Yeah.
Everybody's talking about Giannis and the Greek Freak, but his team is a 500 team right now. They're not really putting it together, even though they've made trades to try to get themselves better with bringing in Bledsoe. But
at the end of the day, like everyone's prediction, and you can't predict the season on paper. So you don't know what's going to happen, right? We wouldn't have said day one that Gordon Hayward's going to be out in the first 5 minutes of the season, and the Celtics would win 16 straight, and the East looks somewhat comparable to the West, and you would have been like, oh, you're crazy again. So it's just sports playing out as sports, and you guys play as the season goes, and some teams will have their ups, some teams will have their downs. OKC may come together in the second half after the All-Star break and be the dominant team that we're talking about in the second half,
And I think this goes back to a conversation that we had at a different day on the NBA being this great league. And the reason why I think the NBA is the most fun league to be a fan of right now is that you have young stars who have just shown up.
Mm-hmm.
Giannis is 22. Kristaps Porzingis is 22 years old. You have a guy like Joel Embiid with the 76ers. Right? What's the common thread of all 3 of those great players? They're all in the East. They're all in the East. You go to the Celtics. You have Kyrie. You have Jaylen Brown. You go to Toronto. You have DeMar DeRozan. You go to Washington, and you have John Wall. Like all of these young great players are over in the East. That they might not be the household names. Like hey, look who's over in the West. You have Paul George. Paul George has been in the league for a decade, right?
Yeah.
You look at Carmelo Anthony. Carmelo Anthony's like 34 years old. He's been in the league for almost 15 years.
Yeah.
You have older Chris Paul, older star. Harden, not an old guy, but an older star. I mean, even a guy like Steph Curry is closing in on 30, and you have young, early 20s stars in the Eastern Conference. And I think that you just didn't expect it, but you're watching it kind of shift in real time. And I think that's the fun part.
Yeah.
Is seeing all that happen. And the Celtics have some young stars that are helping them win.